All right, guys, welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick here, we're doing some preview and predictions for Week 14 in college football. Rivalry week is upon us. We picked 10 of the best games that we're going to dive into and dish out our analysis and predictions for, starting with Friday, the Egg Bowl going down in Stark Vegas. Mississippi State trying to play spoiler in more ways than one, because if they win this game, they're absolutely going to break the heart of Rebel fans whose head coach, his decision is going to be made right after this game, it appears, regarding his future. And if you want to talk about a distraction, talk about that. A LeBron-style decision from a head coach is definitely going to throw a fork into some plans. Not going to be an easy game. Good news is at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, Trinidad Chambliss and co. lead a high-flying offense into a game against a tough Bulldog defense that has just not been good. Tough in a bad way, right? Because they've been giving up 400-plus yards in every single conference game this year. They've given up 240 rushing in 3 straight games against some pretty top-tier rushing attacks. They're going to face another one here. Q1 Lacey's having an elite season, 100-plus yards per game, 19 touchdowns. Chambliss is dangerous with his legs as well due to his explosiveness. He's great as a passer, really showcasing some nice arm talent this year at 65% comp rate. Has a very deep receiving group, one of the deepest in the country. If Mississippi State's going to want to win this game, they're going to have to match them strike for strike, and I think they're certainly capable of doing that with Blake Shapen at the helm. He's having a respectable season, 15 touchdowns, 221 yards. I think he has nice explosive receivers in Brennan Thompson and Anthony Evans. The thing is, this run game for Mississippi State, despite the talent in the backfield, Nick, has not been as good as we thought it would. You know, they had 200 yards against Tennessee, and since then in conference play, they've yet to hit 150. This is supposed to be a dynamic offense that had a slashing, rushing attack, and they've just not been able to do that. This Ole Miss run defense started off the year on a tough note, but as things have went on, though, they've progressively gotten better, even though Georgia kind of had their number in that game. I think the run defense, though, was a lot better than it was, so that's going to force Mississippi State to potentially be one-dimensional, but I think they're going to be able to spark some big pass plays, Nick. I think these safeties aren't as athletic as people probably think because it's an SEC team. I think the corners could definitely be vulnerable. This defensive line for Ole Miss has definitely started to play much better football, led by Xavier Harris, Will Eccles on the interior, Prince Will Unamadellan's really upped his play, an elite linebacker, and Santorini Perkins. But I think they're going to be able to throw the football. They're going to take a lot of risks. Ole Miss, they're going to look to gamble on fourth down. They had 7 attempts against Florida, for example, in a game that was close, and that could be your opportunity to strike. So I think this is going to be a close game for 2-3 quarters. Ole Miss will eventually pull away with its offense. But everything going on surrounding Lane and how they love to fumble these type of games with so much on the line, I don't rule it out. And I think that Miss State's probably going to be a good pick to cover, but I think the Rebels will pull away late.
I think Mississippi State will cover this spread. I think they will be competitive in this matchup here going down in Starkville on Friday morning. I think it's a bit of an injustice. This game's not on Thanksgiving night. They moved it. I understand moving it sometimes, but I would have liked to see this game on Thanksgiving. Give it the prime time attention. Considering that everything that's unfolded, I certainly think now it would have been great on Thanksgiving. But it grabs that early slot on Black Friday. And I think it's certainly worth tuning into. This is a very key matchup here between two teams. Obviously Mississippi State doesn't have a whole lot to play for, so this is more about Ole Miss. You're certainly having the conversation about the Rebels as Lane Kiffin. I feel like he's leaving. That's what I understand. That's what I've kind of come to that conclusion based off everything that's going on. I just don't think he can stay after everything that's happened here. It's hard to track, obviously. There's so many different, stories going around, so many different things. It's so hard to follow. Been an incredible saga, really kind of crazy here. I do think he is leaving. And I think he will probably end up in Baton Rouge. That's what I've kind of settled on. I did think he was going to go to Florida, but I believe he will go to LSU. But as for this game, I think, Mississippi State will give Ole Miss a scare. This is an Ole Miss team that this distraction cannot be easy in the locker room. I'm sure these guys are certainly thinking about it here. Mississippi State, they have nothing to play for. They have absolutely nothing to play for except to upset their rival. They have nothing on the cards. And when you're playing a team like that, it can be dangerous. I know as an Alabama fan, it's dangerous when you play Auburn that have nothing to play for at home at Jordan-Hare. They just want to rough things up and make something happen. This is a great situation for Mississippi State to go out and do that here. I think this is a good opportunity. When I look at Mississippi State, I think the offense is pretty solid, right? 31.5 points per game is good. The defense giving 28.4 points per game is not great, but the rushing attack has been poor. 3.62 yards per attempt is not great. Fluff Bothwell is going to have a really strong day here. He's going to have to really be the top guy on the ground. Shapen's going to have to get his legs involved as well, and Shapen has to avoid has to be mistake free. If he has mistakes, he is going to be a long day for the Bulldogs here. He's got to play clean football. This is a team that took some good teams right down to the wire. They took Florida. They took Texas right down to the wire. They haven't looked great as the last couple of weeks, but here State can certainly turn things around. As for Ole Miss, right, they've kind of just been in a spot where they are kind of coasting themselves into the playoffs. But if they lose to Mississippi State, I don't know if they're necessarily in the playoff. Things could certainly change. Even with two losses, they may find themselves in a tricky situation, all things considered, with what's going on outside of their football, in terms of on the field, and then also their resume is kind of weak compared to some of the other SEC teams. Chambliss has plugged in, been a really solid quarterback. Kyle Lacey, one of the best backs in the country, certainly playing well, and the defense is really solid. I think Ole Miss will get the job done when it's all said and done. They'll win this game, right? 37.2 points per game. The defense is a pretty strong unit. They'll get enough stops and what I think will be an absolute shootout back and forth affair. But State's going to push them for 3 quarters, potentially even early into the fourth quarter. They'll make this a contest. It will go back and forth. Eventually, Ole Miss will get the job done. But a very intriguing game going down on Friday. Certainly a game you have to watch because there is a lot of moving pieces here. And that's kind of what you want in a rivalry like this, right? A lot of moving pieces, a lot of drama, a lot of written for the movies, it feels like, going down in Starkville. A very intriguing game starting off on Black Friday.
The only thing I'll correct you on is you say they're not playing for anything. If they win this game, they're going to a bowl, and that's big for this program. It's really been struggling. So there's definitely a lot on the table here for the Bulldogs. Moving to another game going down on Friday afternoon, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Big time one in the Mountain West is San Diego State. If they win this game, they're punching their ticket. New Mexico, if they win, I think it's kind of a sit and wait situation, but their odds of getting in are pretty good. 2.5 point road underdogs or favorites, that is the Aztecs. This is a really good defense. They're giving up only 11.6 points per game. They have some great pass rushers in Trey White and Ryan Henderson. It's a very deep defense in their front seven. The corners, led by Chris Johnson, have played very well this season. I mean, this has been a dominant defense in this conference. They also shut out Cal 34-0 back in the beginning of the year. So this is a team that's played some of the tougher offenses throughout the year, and they've looked very stout. Their own offense, they've struggled to score. They haven't hit 30 in 5 straight games. But when you have a defense like this, you only need to be so good. Jaden Denengle at quarterback. It's brought them some stability compared to recent years. Still not great, but Lucky Sutton and Jordan Napier, two very talented players for this offense that provide a lot of playmaking for them. New Mexico also has a very good defense. Not as polished as the Tex by any means. They have a great defensive end in Keyshawn James Newberry, who's been phenomenal for them. 11 tackles for loss on the year. They have an elite linebacker in Jackson Eck, who has 115 tackles. So they got some playmaking of their own. Both run defenses are very solid for New Mexico, though. I think their offense is a little bit more inconsistent than San Diego State's. And, they run for 152 yards. It's a respectable number. Jack Lane, he's been great when it comes to, honing in on not turning the ball over so much. 206 pass yards per game for him. So this is a solid offense for New Mexico. Keegan Johnson, Dorian Thomas, are their top two pass catchers. That's pretty much it. I just don't know if the Lobos will have enough offense, Nick. I think the Aztecs, if they're forced to play from behind, that could be an issue. But I think that they're going to be able to control the pace of this game, even on the road, get the job done, and punch their ticket to the Mountain West Championship game.
Dude, before I talk about this game, I want to apologize to Mississippi State fans. For some reason, my notes I had that you guys only had 4 wins. You have 5, so certainly playing for bowl eligibility. I apologize to all the Bulldogs out there on that one. For this game, this is an interesting matchup in the Mountain West going down on San Diego Sports or CBS Sports Network. That is, I beg your pardon. This Aztec team, I think they're a really solid team to watch. Their defense has been phenomenal. 11.6 points per game given up is really good. They shut out Stony Brook, they shut out Cal, they shut out Fresno State. That's 3 shutouts on the board. Pretty good numbers there. They looked good against San Jose State last week, winning 25-3 in what was a game where they just were stifling that San Jose State offense that really does have some juice and is able to put some good points up on the board here. This defense has been phenomenal. I like the pieces they have. Ryan Henderson coming off the edge with 6 sacks. He has been really good. And then Owen Chambliss, their linebacker, has almost 100 tackles. He has been a really strong asset that's been solid as well, finding his way into the backfield. I think Dangle is a decent enough quarterback. He's done okay for this team, kind of setting the tone and keeping them comfortable there. I think, Lucky Sutton is a really solid back for them, 1,100 yards rushing, 9 touchdowns. He's been a good guy. Expect them to try and run the ball here to have success against this Lobos defense. 4.46 yards per attempt on the ground for the Aztecs. As for New Mexico, they're not a bad team necessarily, right? Scoring 28.4 points per game, giving up only 23 points per game. They've really been solid as of late. They've run 5 in a row and really looked solid in those matchups. They beat UNLV, who's a pretty solid team down in Vegas. They just knocked off Air Force on the road and really stifled that offense. So the defense is coming around. They're holding opponents at 3.24 yards per attempt on the ground. That's the key matchup I'm watching. Can San Diego State have the sustained success on the ground that they're used to? If they struggle to run the ball, I think New Mexico is good value to win this game. If they can run the ball like they want to and like they have been doing all season long, San Diego State will win what will be a close contest. I think they end up winning by a touchdown on the road. I think they're a really solid team. I think they'll have a good day on the ground, and this New Mexico offense will not have enough to keep up with this. The defense will just be able to shut them down and really kind of put them in a tough spot. That run defense for San Diego State's giving up 3.03 yards per attempt, and New Mexico's only averaging about 4.2 yards per attempt. I like San Diego State in this one. I think a lower scoring affair is certainly in line here. I think this is a very talented San Diego State team. I like the defense they have here, and they're going to win this battle and put themselves in a good spot to compete for that conference title in the Mountain West.
We're going to skip Georgia and Georgia Tech. Ranked matchup, yes. But Georgia Tech, they've been so annoying the last couple of weeks, and honestly, who gives a damn? So we're going to go ahead and move down to a massive one Friday night in Austin. Texas A&M traveling to Texas. The Longhorns can make a great page for the playoffs if they can win this game. The Aggies, on the other hand, they're looking to stay undefeated, potentially get into the SEC title game. A lot on the line for them. Not as much because they're still in the playoffs nonetheless. But this is a massive contest. The Longhorns, their defense has just not been very good over the last month. They've given up 30-plus points in 4 straight games, regardless of who they've been playing. They had a big lead against Vanderbilt, and the defense started giving up some big pass plays. Against Georgia, that game was close, and then the Bulldogs scored, and then had an onside kick, and then just sucked the air out of Texas. Their offense has learned how to play football again, though. Arch Manning's been dealing, making plays in and out of the pocket. The receivers have been stepping up for the most part. Outside of the Georgia game, right, where the receivers weren't great, Arch had some bad throws as well. But they put up a respectable effort in that one. The final score wasn't exactly vindictive of how close that game was, but Arch has gotten 300-plus yards in 3 out of the last 4 games, up to 23 touchdowns to the air now. He's got 7 on the ground. The run game's really been absent for Texas, and this is an A&M defense that they're good against the run, especially in short yardage. But when it comes to allowing explosives, that's something they do frequently, especially in conference play and even against Notre Dame. They allowed a lot of explosive plays throughout the season, and that could be a problem for them. I still think they're very talented up front. Guys like Albert Regis, Cassius Howell coming off the edge is incredibly elite against a bit of a shaky offensive line for Texas. Teron York and his explosiveness can definitely fire downhill and create negative plays. So Texas, they're going to be in a lot of those long down and distance situations, I think. I definitely believe that A&M corners are respectable in Dees Ricks and Will Lee, but I also think they can be vulnerable at times. And you got guys like Ryan Wingo, DeAndre Moore coming off a hat trick. Parker Livingstone's a nice downfield option. So I definitely think these receivers can have some success, and they're going to be able to generate some offense. By the other hand of things, I just think A&M is going to be able to do too much with their offensive line that's loaded with size. Their run game provides great balance. That first half against South Carolina, one to forget. But in the second half, Marcel Reed put on a clinic. He ended the day with 439 yards and 3 scores. So this team can battle resilience, Nick. If you're down by 27 points to anybody and you can come back in the second half and win, I can believe in you to go on the road and beat your rivals. So I think A&M's going to get the job done here. At times, I've probably doubted this team more times than I should. Tricky situation here, though. Texas is playing for a lot, and this game really is 50-50. But I'm just going to go ahead and take this more explosive offense going against a Texas secondary that's been ailing for weeks. And I think Casey Concepcion and Mario Craver are going to do their thing.
Tricky matchup indeed. This is a very intriguing one. I'll quickly say on Georgia Tech, we skipped it. Yeah, I think Georgia wins by 20 points. They're like 2 touchdown favorites right now. I don't really think that game's actually that intriguing. Kind of weird. It's off campus and moved to Mercedes-Benz. I don't like that. Keep these games on campuses. I don't really understand that at all. I know it's the same city, but I don't really think that was necessary to do from the Yellow Jackets. I think Georgia wins that game pretty comfortably. As for this game, I'm going to pick Texas here, right? I think this is a very intriguing matchup, and I really think A&M is lucky they got away from that South Carolina. If they ended up losing that South Carolina game, their resume would be pretty weak. I don't want to totally dive into hypotheticals, but think about it. If they had lost to South Carolina, their best win was against Notre Dame. But outside of that, who was their best win? Maybe Arkansas, LSU. Like they didn't have, I guess, Missouri, right? They didn't have a great resume outside of that Notre Dame win. If they had lost to South Carolina, and especially if they lost by 20 plus, like it was looking like that was the route it was going down, this game would mean a whole lot more, and it certainly would have had a lot of chips on the table. Now it seems like the chips are on the table for Texas. Texas wins this game. I think they're in the college football playoff, right? I think that's a strong enough resume, despite the 3 losses for what this Longhorns team has been able to do as of late. I know they lost to Georgia, but otherwise they've been able to win shootouts, put up some resilience. They fought back on the road at Mississippi State. They were able to hold off Vanderbilt. That was a surging team. They won on the road in overtime against a Kentucky team that has a very strong defense. This is a Texas team I think is playing good football right now and kind of getting themselves into a groove. I would not be surprised they win this game, which is why I'm going to pick them. Defense giving up 20 points per game. That's a pretty solid number. The offense nearly scoring 30 points per game as well. It's finally coming into their own. The offense is developing a little bit. Obviously, they're still not running the ball to the level that you would hope out of this Texas team. 3.73 yards per attempt is not great. The defense, though, is really holding offenses at check. 2.85 yards per attempt given up on the ground is a really strong number, under 5 yards per play for this Texas defense. They struggle a little bit against Arkansas, but they also were able to kind of keep themselves at distance away from there. They were able to really put some of those other offenses on their schedule in check. I know Oklahoma was battling injuries, but they held them to only 6 points, which I think is really a solid on their resume. Same thing, really holding Kentucky to a limited amount of points. I know it's a bad offense. I think this Texas team, Arch Manning, is finally getting comfortable here. I think Arch is really kind of looking pretty solid overall. 23 touchdowns to 7 picks, not bad at all. 2,700 yards passing, really good. Hitting Wingo a lot, his solid guy. I think Hill and Simmons have stepped up big for this defense. A&M, I just don't think they have the mental fortitude to win this game. I know they came back against South Carolina, but this is a rivalry game. Everything has to be thrown out the books here. It's going to be very loud at DKR. The first time they're playing in Austin, and since this rivalry has returned, it's the first time in a very long time they played in Austin. Marcel Reed has made some bad decisions as the last couple of weeks, throwing some bad picks. Still having a great season, 2,700 yards passing, 25 touchdowns, and 8 picks overall. But he's made some mistakes. I think the crowd pressure, the noise will get to him. It's a very loud environment at DKR, a very tough place to play. I like this defense to be strong here. I think it's going to be a lower scoring game. I think this will be a lower scoring game between two really talented teams. That's why I have 24-21 is my ultimate final score. I think these two teams will trade some punches early, but the defenses will get settled to the game, and ultimately Texas will find a way to win it late in the fourth quarter. A game that would throw a complete haymaker into the college football playoff conversation. It would change a lot of things. I think Texas would have a very strong resume at that moment in time. I'm certainly rooting for A&M, but I think the Longhorns get the job done at home.
I moved to Saturday. It's beautiful. You wake up and instantly the game is being played between Ohio State and Michigan. The Wolverines looking for their fifth in a row, 11.5-point underdogs. We've talked about this, right? And we talked about it last year, where it seems to just be a mental blockade from Ohio State, where they don't believe they can beat this team. They should have won last year by a lot of points, and they lost the game at home. I still doubled down and picked them to win the national title, and that's exactly what they did, and that helped soften the blow. But there was a lot of doubt in this program after this game last year, Nick, and I don't think that doubt will be there if they lose again. But it's just going to be an awful situation once more for Ohio State if they cannot get past this team. Michigan's offense, not that great. It's certainly improved. Levels better than it was last year, putting about 29 points per game. Bryce Underwood at times looks comfortable. Not so much in other situations. Only 9 passing touchdowns this year. The running back room's really beat up. Justice Haynes is not going to play. Jordan Marshall's probably going to be questionable. He should be getting the go, though. But this is still a team that likes to run the football. It's still a very respectable offensive line. They're going to play with a lot of physicality. I think you're going to see Bryce Underwood get north of 20 carries. At times, I've seen them call design quarterback runs, and he succeeds with those. So this is going to be a day where he hits a career high, I think, in carries. You're going to see a lot of his size involved. 6'4", 228 against a physical defense. In this defense, the defensive line for Ohio State is completely revamped coming into this year, even though Caden Curry is a veteran who's having a great season. Everyone else is back at linebacker. The secondary, guys like Caleb Downs, Arvell Reese, two of the top players in the country. This is a secondary that's rock solid. Michigan doesn't have many burners. They don't have guys that are going to stretch the field at all. So it's just going to come down to pure physicality, Nick. And guess what? Michigan has won that battle every single time for almost half a decade now against Ryan Day's team. I think Ohio State clearly has the components. Julian Sands having a phenomenal season, going up against a good secondary, but one that Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate can have a field day with. The run game at times for Ohio State's not been as pleasant. I think it's going to be more of a one-dimensional offense in this game for the Buckeyes. And I watched this offensive line last year, Nick, where I still think it's the biggest weakness for Ohio State. Two starters, Carson Hinsman, Tegra Tajbola on the interior offensive line, get absolutely manhandled for 4 quarters against the Wolverines. Those guys are still there. Derek Moore, Jayshon Barham's coming off the edge, Rayshawn Benny. This is going to be tough. And if you tell me Michigan's going to win, I'm not going to sit here and argue with you. I'm going to throw my hands up and say I totally understand. They shouldn't lose, Nick. We're both going to pick them to win. I think Michigan keeps it close and they're going to cover. If the Buckeyes go out there and cover, though, I will be thoroughly impressed.
I will also be thoroughly impressed. Everything you just said, I agree with 100%. There was not a single point you made I disagree with. I think this is the same exact read you and I both have on this game. We both like the under. We both like Michigan to cover the spread. I think you and I have the same read because I think it is a very plausible and very easy thing to kind of look at and say to yourself, this makes a ton of sense. And it does make a ton of sense. I just said A&M, it doesn't have a whole lot, and their fans are probably pretty happy that they don't have to worry about beating their rival on the road to secure their playoff spot because they have their playoff spot all but secured. year, Ohio State fans should be feeling the same type of relief there as well because, man, this could have got ugly if they were fighting for a playoff spot in Ann Arbor against a team that's owned them for the past half decade. Oh boy, that would have been a very tough pill to swallow for Ohio State fans, even though they won the national championship last year. It would have been hard to look at, right? Certainly would have been hard to look at. Ohio State has that cushion. If they lose this game, it's not going to absolutely murder them. And I think Michigan would certainly be good value if they win this game, and they would put themselves in a good spot to kind of fight for a playoff spot, even with the two losses. Obviously, you have an out-of-conference loss on the road in the SEC, and then you have an in-conference loss earlier in the season to USC. And this is a Michigan team that I think is solid, right? This is a team that's obviously competitive with this team. The offense is a lot better than I thought it was going to be. 29.3 points per game is solid. 5.59 yards per attempt is a really strong number on the ground. Bryce Underwood has plugged in, has been really solid for this team. He looks good. The pressure's not getting to him. Playing at home will certainly help with that as well, obviously. A very talented defense that's still stifling opponents, under 3 yards per attempt on the ground, under 18 points per game. This is just going to be a low-scoring slugfest battling it out. Ohio State's the best team in the country for a reason. I don't have to wax on about the resume. You know the resume, 38 points per game, giving up less than 8 points per game. Just a phenomenal team across the board. But it's really, again, you're throwing everything out the window when it's rivalry week on the road. It's going to be a dogfight. It's going to be back and forth. Ohio State will eventually get the job done. They'll win this game. They'll find a way to get the job done. They'll finish the season unbeaten. Sayan probably wins the Heisman. I don't know if he necessarily deserves it, but he probably wins the Heisman. Right now, this Ohio State team's the best team in the country, and they will win this game. But, man, Michigan will not make it easy. They're going to fight. They're going to make it a dogfight back and forth, lower scoring. I think Ohio State wins by a touchdown. A very intriguing game, though. Keep an eye on it. Certainly wouldn't be surprised if Michigan goes out and wins this game.
Going down at the same time, all eyes will be in Ann Arbor, but Pitt and Miami have a very crucial game for the playoff picture as well. Panthers looking to punch their ticket to Charlotte and then potentially into the CFB. Miami, if they win this game, it's kind of a sit-and-wait situation for them. This is an offense, though, under Carson Beck last 3 games that's looked really polished. And I know they haven't faced the toughest of opponents by any means. This is a team we've always seen just be inconsistent for no reason against weaker tier competition. And even against Syracuse, you saw that in the first half. But he's looked very polished over the last couple weeks. 75% comp rate in 4 out of the last 5 games. He's throwing for a lot of touchdowns, a lot of yards as well. Very interested to see that and see if it can continue to play out against the secondary that hasn't been great. They give him about 236 yards per game, but under Pat Narduzzi, it's a ball-hawking unit. 14 picks on the year, 7 of those coming over the last 3, including against Notre Dame and Georgia Tech. So they've been stepping up against top-tier competition. I think the run defense is good. I know Jeremiah Love had a good run or 2 against him. I don't think that should lead to them being knocked at all because this is still a very impressive group at linebacker led by Rasheem Biles, Kyle Lewis. Up front, you have Jimmy Scott as well. This is a talented defense. It's a well-coached group. I think for Pitt, though, you're going up against a Miami defense that has a lot of pass rushing. Your offensive line's weak. The run game has just been poor. Desmond Reed all year has been incredibly banged up. If he plays, he'll be an asset as a pass catcher, but they're not going to be able to probably spring many runs on the ground. And I think Mason Heinschel, this guy is a boatload of talent. I've been impressed by him a lot this year. But he's still a young quarterback. He's made some awful throws, some bad decisions, not seeing the coverage well. And again, I think he's going to be great as time goes on. But against Notre Dame, you saw this team really struggle to throw the football because the quarterback wasn't great. But also the receivers are just getting smoked in bump and run coverage. Miami, if they want to make some things physical, with guys like Keontae Scott out there, Jacoby Thomas at safety, Zachariah Poyer. I mean, they don't really have the athletes, I think, to really stretch the field to take advantage of Miami if they do want to get aggressive. So I think Miami's going to win this game. It's going to be another one of those ones where it's close. I don't think Pitt's just going to go away. And it's hard to pick the Hurricanes to cover because they've just never really did anything to earn covering by 6.5 by a touchdown, basically on the road in an important game. Nick, just Cristobal hasn't really established that reputation. I know you're going to pick them to cover, and I'll be rooting for them to cover because I would love to see Miami in the playoff. But this is going to be a tricky one for them.
Yeah, I don't feel exactly confident about this. Miami, a very quiet team that's not getting a lot of love. I think because the ACC just being down this year has kind of put them in a position where they're not getting a whole lot of love. And I kind of understand that, right? The conference is just not having a great season. Some of the heavy hitters that you thought might have good seasons, like Florida State and Clemson, have really fallen off the wagon and do not look good this year. So I understand why they're not getting a whole lot of love. But Miami, quietly, since that SMU loss in overtime, they've won against Syracuse, NC State, and Virginia Tech by pretty comfortable margins. I know they looked poor against Syracuse in the first half, but they ended up up putting, on them at the end. That won by 28 in that one. Beck, having a decent enough season, kind of the Carson Beck season you expected, 2,800 yards passing, 22 touchdowns, 9 picks. That's a Beck season, right? You expect him to look like that, 33 points per game. Pretty solid number overall, 4.25 yards per attempt on the ground. Maybe a little bit lower than you were hoping for if you're a Canes fan. The defense has been really good. That's the story, and I think the defense will be what wins this game at the end of the day. 14.5 points per game, under 3 yards per attempt on the ground, about 4.5 yards per play. I think the defense has enough to win them a gritty game on the road. I think they'll, be in a dogfight, right? I think Pitt will certainly put up a good fight. Pitt's offense, 37.6 points per game. They're really solid. They've had a lot of moving pieces, obviously. They blew the brakes off Georgia Tech last week. It was a really impressive win for them. Their defense, I just don't think their defense is strong enough to win this game. 23.7 points per game. They are good against the run. 2.75 yards per attempt is a really solid number, but I think Miami will beat them in the past. I just don't think Pitt can win a physical contest against this Miami team. I think there's just too much physicality, too much talent on the board for the Hurricanes here. This is a game they got to win, right? They want to be in the playoff. I don't blame them. The ACC needs to get a team in the playoff, and Miami is their best shot to get a team in the playoff. I think Miami's a talented roster. I don't think they can win a national title. I don't think they have the type of roster to do so, but I think they can win this conference. I think they can win this matchup. A very intriguing game. Miami has not played on the road much this year outside of the state of Florida, so it's certainly a tough thing they're not exactly comfortable with. An intriguing matchup. I think Miami will win and cover the spread, but I don't feel good about it. Of the 10 games on the slate that we've picked this week, this is the one I feel the worst about in terms of picking the spread. Don't love it, but I think Miami does get the job done ultimately.
Another reason I can't really pick on the cover is because a lot of drives get stalled out because this run game in short yardage is abysmal despite having one of the biggest O-lines in the country. It's just awful. I don't know why, but that's going to lead to a lot of drives getting stalled out. Potential opportunities to flip field for Pitt. Moving to the 3:30 slate, Oregon and Washington. I picked Pitt to win in the preseason. I'm flipping on my pick. I also picked Washington to beat Oregon in the preseason. I'm flipping once again. And I hate to do this because I love DeMond Williams. I love Washington. This is a team I love to root for. Williams is a highly incredible quarterback who's going to be special one day. He's having a great season, about 300 yards per game. I just seen the Oregon secondary get flatlined against USC. Denzel Boston, Desmond Roebuck are going to be looking to make plays downfield, and I think they certainly can. I just don't know if Washington's going to be able to have the run game to compete here with the Ducks. I know they've been respectable for most part of the year, but against Ohio State and Michigan, the run game was horrendous. The pass rush was, getting home on Williams. They were able to key in on him when it comes to QB spies. They just don't have the bodies in the trenches, Nick, to beat an elite opponent at this point. I know things have been tricky for Dan Lanning against this team. Going into Seattle's not going to make things any easier. It's just hard to imagine Oregon losing this game with so much on the line because they lose, they're probably out of the playoff picture. This run game with an elite group of backs is just too good against a defense that does not create many negative plays. They're amongst the worst in the country in tackles for loss and sacks with only 19. They just don't seem like they're that talented up front or really on the entire defense. Even though they've really been playing good, it's been very resilient efforts throughout the year from this defense, even against the tougher composition. I'm going to take Oregon to win, Nick. It's going to be a tough one. It's going to be a close one. Oregon, of course, still dealing with a lot of injuries at receiver. Doesn't make anything easier. In Washington, their best asset is their secondary. So this will be a tough one. I just can't pull the trigger on the upset, but I'll probably be rooting for it because I love Williams.
Yeah, I can't pull the trigger either, but I think this is certainly one where you got to look at it and say to yourself, Washington is good value to win this game and upset Oregon here. I keep talking about, these teams that are having the ability to be afforded a loss. They're not like in a situation they have to win or they go home. Well, Oregon is kind of a situation where they got to win or go home. I think if they lose, they'll be on the outside looking in. I think they're in a really tough spot if they lose this game at 10-2 with a resume that I just think is extremely weak compared to some of the SEC or even some of the Big Ten resumes that they would be compared against. I think they put themselves in a very tough spot if they lose this game. And you alluded to their struggles against this Washington team. They've lost 3 of the last 4, including 1 in Eugene, 1 in Seattle, 1 in Vegas, right? They've struggled all over the place. They won last year in Eugene, but I think heading to Seattle certainly changes the script. I think that's why Washington covers the spread. I have a 28-24 score when it's all said and done. Oregon's a good team, right? Don't get me wrong. Score about 40 points per game, 6.13 yards per attempt on the ground is phenomenal, 7.25 yards per play. All good numbers here, but this Washington team, DeMond Williams, I think is an incredible quarterback. I love watching Williams play. He is so talented across the board, and this team is really good. I think these two offenses are typically great, but I think a lower scoring affair is in order. I love what the secondary can do for Washington. It's a very strong unit that's very physical. Give up 18.8 points per game. I think they'll hold Oregon in check early on. And this will come down to the fourth quarter, will be a one-score game. I think Oregon eventually does get the job done and puts themselves in the college football playoff. Would be kind of hard to see them falling from six to all the way out, but obviously if things happen, we'll see what happens, and we'll certainly break that all down when push comes to shove. I think Oregon gets the job done when it's all said and done, but this is another one where I would not be surprised at all if you see this Washington team win. Williams is just an incredibly talented quarterback. Coleman's really solid as a back for them. The defense is fairly strong. They have great pieces in the secondary that are really good and can certainly match up well against a understaffed, I should say, due to the injuries in the Oregon Ducks wide receiving core that's certainly been through a lot this year. A very intriguing matchup, a great matchup going down on CBS. I'll certainly be tuning into this one, keeping my eye on it. I would not be shocked at all if Washington pulls off the upset. For now, I'll take the Ducks, but man, that's a very intriguing matchup going down at 3:30 Eastern.
At the same time, on ESPN, an SEC ranked clash, Vanderbilt and Tennessee. The Doors still have a sliver of hope for the CFP. Need a lot of help, but anything can happen, right? But first, we need to beat Tennessee, who's coming off a great win in Gainesville. I was at that game, Nick. We left after about 20 minutes of game time because Tennessee was up 28-0 in the blink of an eye. How impressive was that? And they just pretty much shut things down the rest of the game. Joey Aguilar was putting on a clinic. He's putting up 286 yards per game through the air. Their run game was looking really good against the Gators. They have a nice three-headed monster led by Deshaun Bishop in the backfield. Talented group of receivers. It's also got a nice trio. Going up against a Vanderbilt team who they're well coached on defense because Clark Leah, that's like his specialty, right? This is a team that's really been able to develop some pass rushers. They've been able to be good against the run. Guys like Condoré Schneider, Miles Capers, Zaylen Wood. I mean, this is a nice defense. I think it's very talented. Their secondary at times has struggled against some of the top-tier competition. I'm seeing a lot of offense in this one, and I think Tennessee, their defense, even though they look good against the Gators, whatever, good job. I think overall this year they've just not been great. I think the defensive line's talented. Their pass rush has been too inconsistent at times, and that can lead to problems. And Vanderbilt's not going to be in drop-back passing situations to let you just tee off on their offensive line. I think the run defense has been poor throughout the year. The secondary has been incredibly hobbled, of course, right? But those problems should be fixed by the end of the year now. And it's just kind of who they are as a team that's probably going to struggle through the air. And for Vanderbilt, they've really opened things up. This is a passing attack that put up 539 yards against Kentucky. Pavia, he's had 300 yards, 350 plus yards, that is, in 3 straight games now. This is already a tough scheme to defend, and now they have this ungodly passing attack, Nick. The RPO style offense, all the misdirection. It's just a headache, right? And Pavia's done a great job operating it. He's playing with a lot of confidence since that Alabama game where he made some mistakes and they lost. Trey Richardson's really stepped up. Eli Stowers is still tremendous. And this run game this year has also provided good balance. This offense is very good. What they did to Auburn, I think, is ridiculously impressive. And Tennessee, even though they're at home, I think Vanderbilt is just going to give them too many problems on the offensive side of the ball that the Vols are not going to be able to counter. High-scoring game, they're going to get the job done by a point. This will be an exciting one, game of the day for me in terms of pure excitement.
Yeah, I think this certainly is the game you want to look at in terms of excitement if you're a neutral. This is a phenomenal matchup. And, I've talked a lot about resumes here, but Vanderbilt, they're not getting a lot of love in the national spotlight. That resume, I think, is a really strong resume. If they can rubber stamp that with a win at Tennessee, that's a phenomenal resume. Your only 2 losses are at Texas by 3 points, at Alabama by 16 points, and it really was not, it was a lot closer than that. That was a Alabama covering and widening the spread or widening the point spread at the end of the game and putting some points on the board in garbage time where they were a lot more competitive in that game than a 16-point loss. That's a phenomenal resume, and I think if they weren't named Vanderbilt, they would be getting a lot of love. If that was Texas's resume, you'd be seeing the media hyping it up all over the place. I think just because it's Vanderbilt, they're getting a little bit of the short stick from the national media, and I understand it. It's part of the process here, but go out and prove people wrong and go win on the road in Knoxville. That would be a good way to end the season, and they would certainly be in the conversation for that. Pavia is having a great season. He's been really fun to watch. Nearly 3,000 yards passing, 26 touchdowns, only the 6 picks. He's really solid on the ground with the 661 and the 8 touchdowns. He has just been absolutely phenomenal here. The defense, I think, has really solid for this team as well. 21.7 points per game, maybe a little bit higher than you were hoping for, but still a solid number. 3.68 yards per attempt is pretty solid on the ground. I think Vanderbilt wins this game by 10 points. I think they have a really solid team. The offense nearly scoring 40 points per game has been really strong. Tennessee's offense is great, but I think their defense has a lot of question marks here, and I think the scheme that Vanderbilt runs is just a bad matchup for this Tennessee team. Even at home, I think it's just a horrible matchup here. We've seen this Tennessee team struggle against, offenses that have quarterbacks that are mobile, like Oklahoma. I think they've struggled a little bit against Georgia and Alabama offenses that were not as interesting and not as hard to scheme against as Vanderbilt is here. Vanderbilt has a real chance to win a rivalry game here. They have a lot to play for. Tennessee, they're not really in the hunt. Well, they're not in the hunt for the playoff at all here. I think they're kind of just coasting their way through the season. They're going to go to a bowl game and call it a day. Obviously, they had a lot of turmoil in the offseason, so I think Tennessee fans would take an 8-win season and kind of just call it at that and move on from there. Vanderbilt a lot more to play for. Vanderbilt a lot of heart on this team. They're the plucky underdogs of the team that just wants to fight and want to succeed. They have great coaching, great discipline. I think on the road they'll be disciplined. They'll avoid mistakes, play mistake-free football, and you win this ball game. I think they do so. I think they win by 10 points when it's all said and done. I like Vanderbilt to have a really strong upset here on the road in Knoxville.
If you also want excitement, go to the SEC Network. Arkansas hosting Missouri. When you look at the top 7 scoring offenses in the SEC, 4 of them are in the playoffs currently, and the other ones are also ranked. And then you have Arkansas, who's 2-9. This team's just had an incredibly tough schedule. They blew a game early on in the year against Memphis as well. It's also a very difficult non-conference. It's just been tough for Arkansas to find victories, right? But this offense, everyone knows, was going to be good, and they've been great. Run for 200 yards per game. Taylon Green does this thing through the air for another about 250. It's a very deep group, very high flying under Bobby Petrino. This is a phenomenal offense. Their defense has been lackluster throughout the year, though, giving up 34 points per game. I think Ahmad Hardy's probably going to have a big day. I think these receivers can make some big plays as well. Arkansas is going to win the game, though, Nick, against their rival. It's hard to think about the Tigers falling to 7-5. It's going to be another close loss for them. They're due. That's pretty much it. That's the only reason I'm giving it here. They're hosting their rival in a big game to close out the season. They're going to get the victory to finish at a lowly 3-9, but this offense will never be forgotten.
This offense won't be forgotten. This was just a fun unit to watch across the board. Taylon Green has been so fun to watch. This Arkansas team, 34.4 points per game. Great number. Their defense giving up 34.1 points per game. Not a great number. Nearly 6 yards per attempt on the ground for Arkansas's offense, 7 yards per play overall. They're just fun to watch. And I know that there's a lot of big jobs open right now. You're obviously looking at Penn State. You're looking at Florida. You're looking at LSU. It's kind of getting shuffled out. But I think Arkansas is a very intriguing job for whoever they end up hiring. They got great NIL money. They have a phenomenal fan base and a great stadium in Razorback Stadium. I think that's a job that you could certainly turn things around. I think the offensive pieces are there. You have to kind of just figure out what the defensive pieces look like. Maybe you hire a defensive-minded head coach and then go out and get a superstar young offensive coordinator if you can't keep Petrino around. Maybe you put the pieces there. I think there's something interesting to happen potentially in Fayetteville. As for this game, I love Arkansas to win this game in an absolute high-scoring shootout. I like over 65.5 for sure. I think there'll be a lot of points in this game. I think Ahmad Hardy's an incredible back, right? I think he'll certainly have a good day, 1,400 yards rushing, 15 touchdowns for the back from Missouri. But man, this Arkansas team just has so many different pieces on offense to kind of hit you. I think a high-scoring affair, back and forth, but eventually I think Arkansas will pull away. They need a win badly. They would love to get the 3 wins, kind of just forget about the season, get a new coach in there, and see what you can do. A certainly intriguing program I'll keep my eye on. I like the Razorbacks to win this one. Missouri, they're just kind of in a weird spot here. They played a tough schedule this year, so certainly no issues. They had some injuries, but maybe Drinkwitz is gone too. Maybe he ends up taking a different job. I'm curious to see what that looks like. A lot of interesting storylines. If you like points, if you like high-flying offenses that can do it on the ground and through the air, tune into this one at SEC Network, a very intriguing matchup.
We're going to go give the Sun Belt some love. Troy and Southern Miss, they're going to be playing for a chance to play JMU in the Sun Belt title game. Southern Miss, this is an interesting team because a few weeks ago against Texas State, they were a couple-point favorites, and then they're getting blown out 41-14. They just lost on the road to South Alabama 42-35, so they had a bit of a win streak going, and all of a sudden they've come back down to reality as this offense is a high-flying unit. They have a great passing attack. The run game at times is there, but it's also really faded under Braylon Braxton. Charles Huff's a nice offensive coach. They got to get things going together. It's a nice group of receivers as well. Their defense isn't exactly polished by any means. Going up against a Troy defense that's pretty respectable, but they've also had some tough outings. A couple different times this year they've allowed 300 plus on the ground. They also just got shut out themselves by Old Dominion. So Troy's also coming into this one on the wrong side of things, 1-2 over the last 3, and their defense has given up 500 plus yards in back-to-back games now. So somebody's got to get back on track, right? Either this defense or the offense. I think the Southern Miss offense is the unit I'm going to favor. At the same time, though, their run defense isn't anything great. 180 yards per game allowed, 27 touchdowns. The Troy rushing attack is one of the worst things known to mankind, Nick. Look at the last 3 games, 21, 26, and 62 yards. Like 8 different times this year, they have failed to eclipse 100 yards rushing, which really puts this offense at a disadvantage. So something's got to give, right? I think Southern Miss, they're going to win a close one just because they've not been great themselves. I think Troy's going to be incredibly scrappy here. They're going to win the game. I think they're going to. You're going to take Troy for some reason, but again, something's got to give, and you think that the USM defense is going to be the one to give in the wrong direction.
I think the USM defense will be the one to give in the wrong direction. Win and you're in. Well, into the Sun Belt title game. That is, you win the Sun Belt West if you win this game. Both teams at 5-2, the top of the conference, and get the right to play JMU, who are also searching for a playoff spot. I don't think they will ultimately get that playoff spot, but they have a pretty good resume among the group of 5 teams. That is James Madison. Very intriguing matchup. It comes down to the wire here in Hattiesburg. Should be great weather on this Saturday. Should be a really intriguing matchup. Troy, I know it's weird I'm picking a high scoring game here, but I think Troy's offense just gets on track here. 25 points per game, not a great number, and they certainly can't run the ball below 3 yards per attempt, but I think they'll attack this secondary for Southern Miss that has looked a little weak at times. It's still a good unit, right? They've had a decent season, but they've looked a little weak. And I think the defense has struggled as of late. I like what Troy can do here. I think Troy has some key pieces. I think, Kilcrease is a pretty solid quarterback if he ends up being the one that gets the nod. I think the offense has some interesting weapons. I think Troy just comes in here and pulls off a little bit of an upset. I think this is a fun team to watch. I think both these teams are kind of fun to watch. Southern Miss, I just don't think are playing great football. They lost to Texas State. They lost to South Alabama. Really just bad losses in both of those games. Yes, I know Troy got shut out by ODU, but they beat Georgia State. They kind of get themselves back into groove here. I think they kind of keep that momentum, get themselves a nice big win, and go play for a conference title. I like what Troy's been able to do. I like what their coaching staff can do. I think they're a very solid team with good veteran experience across the board. They have the type of experience to win this game on the road in a battle. I think they get the job done and win this one by a couple points.
I will say Southern Miss has an impressive 20 interceptions on the year from its defense. They don't have any in the last 2 weeks, so it seems like they're due to get back in that column. They could definitely swing things in their direction. Capping things off with the Iron Bowl, amazing game we have on tap here. And this is something we foreshadowed all the way back in February, Nick, and we talked about this as a alum of the university. You said, yeah, we're probably going to lose this game. And I, as an analyst, picked Bama to go 9-3, losing to Auburn in the season finale to get eliminated from the CFP. So pretty much everything we talked about is coming to fruition. Now we're here in a doomsday situation where we have to go to Jordan-Hare and win a night game to make the CFP. It's going to be hard, right? In Jordan-Hare at night, these plays that I've seen in college football history have been some of the wackiest ever, and a lot of them have come on the heels of the Crimson Tide doing the improbable to win. They're going to need another one. Ty Simpson in this offense, it just seems to fade, especially in second halves. They've not been great in the second half of games. Their second half, or their 2-minute offense before the end of the first half has really been a saving grace for them. The run game has just continuously gotten worse. The offensive line can't do everything. The quarterback play from Ty Simpson, he's been playing as good as you can throughout the year, but it's been a little bit sporadic. Like against South Carolina, missed a lot of throws. Against Oklahoma, there was opportunities. There's been turnovers in a handful of these games now, where it's either a strip sack or an interception. And his play's been fading a little bit, and they're in a tough situation to try and win in this conference when the quarterback has to be perfect. You have to be 50% on third down in every game. This offense is great at stretching the field. The quick to intermediate pass game keeps them ahead of the sticks. The Auburn secondary, I think, is one that's vulnerable and can be attacked by these receivers. But this is a nasty defensive line, one of the best you're going to see in the country, led by Kieran Crawford, Amaris Williams, Keldrick Falk, Xavier Hadkins at linebackers have an elite season. Anyone that's come to this stadium to try to run the ball, it's not going to work out well. Georgia, they put up only 79 rushing in that hard-fought victory back in early October. This is going to be tough, Nick. I think when you want to talk about what Auburn's offense is going to do, I don't know who's going to play quarterback, and I don't think Alabama's going to find out until about an hour before kickoff. You have Jackson Arnold, who has value as a runner. I think Ashton Daniels will ultimately be the starter. He played very good football against Vanderbilt in that close loss. Deuce Knight looked very impressive against Mercer in his first career start. I know that you're not going to be facing the same athletes that Alabama has by any means, but he also showed impressiveness as a runner, and he has some arm strength to him as well. It's going to be a run-heavy approach from Auburn, kind of like they did against Georgia, where it nearly worked for him until that second half was just a disaster for him. This is hard, Nick. I'm going to take Auburn to win. I'm going to double down on it like I did in the preseason, the low-scoring affair. The Tigers are going to be playing with some house money, looking to spoil their rival. And I think they're also knocking on the door of a bowl game as well with 5 wins. So there's a lot on the line here for both teams, bragging rights included. Night game in Jordan-Hare, Nick, is not what you want to hear when your team needs to win this game.
Nuclear fallout alarms are blaring in Tuscaloosa. This is a 5-alarm fire. This is a complete nightmare scenario, and you kind of shot yourself in the foot and put yourself in this situation. If you had just beaten Oklahoma at home, you wouldn't have put yourself in the situation. Like I kept saying, that A&M and Ohio State dodged that situation. Well, Alabama didn't dodge that situation, and now they put themselves in a complete head case of a game at Auburn at Jordan-Hare. They had to escape on a 99-yard drive to force overtime, then win in 4 overtimes a couple years ago. Then the last time they went to Jordan Hare, they needed a 4th and 31 mile, a 4th and a mile prayer from Milroe to save the day. Those two teams that they played from Auburn are nowhere near as talented as the teams that Auburn has currently right now. This is a talented Auburn team. I don't know, the record's not good. They're still a talented team across the board, and they still have a phenomenal defense that can really put you into a headlock. They're really a good defense, 20 points per game, 2.73 yards per attempt. They're a good defense. They're a really solid unit. If the Alabama's going to win this game, Ty Simpson has to be the hero, and he's going to have to play perfect. And he played perfect for most of the season. He played perfect against Tennessee. He played perfect against Georgia. He played pretty strong against LSU. Didn't play great against South Carolina, and they got the job done, and did not play great against Oklahoma, and they ultimately lost that game. Did not play great against Florida State, and they ultimately lost that game. When you have no rushing attack, which Alabama does not have a rushing attack, 3.6 yards per attempt, brutal in conference. It's not really been working. I know, Daniel Hill's banged up. Jam Miller's not been himself. The rushing attack is absolutely horrible. When you don't have a rushing attack, your quarterback has to bail you out, and I don't know if Alabama has, if Ty Simpson's the guy to go into Jordan Hare and bail them out. You needed a hero against Auburn 2021. Bryce Young was the hero. You needed a hero in 2023. Jalen Milroe is the hero. Can Ty Simpson be the hero? At the end of the day, this comes down to whether or not he can come in there and win the damn game. He's got to go out and win the game. He's got to be perfect. He's got to be the hero. That's all the analysis I need to give, because that's what it comes down to. Can Ty Simpson win you this game? And it's a very touchy thing, and it really feels like a jump ball. This is an incredible contest under the lights. The Iron Bowl has really rarely been under the lights. Typically, it's at 3:30. This is a game where all the marbles are on the line. Alabama has to win to go to the college football playoff. Auburn, they have nothing really to play for other than a Birmingham Bowl berth and to spoil their rival's season. An incredible matchup, a game that's going to go back and forth. It's going to come down to the wire, and it's going to be whether or not Ty Simpson can lead this team on a game-winning drive to save the day and save the season. I'm already having nightmares about it. This is certainly going to be a game that's going to drive me nuts as an Alabama fan. But if you're a neutral, this is exactly what you want to see. Can Auburn get the job done? Can they knock off big bad Alabama? Can they be the ones to get the job done, exercise the demons, win for the first time in over half a decade, and get the job done at home? An incredible matchup, an intriguing matchup. I cannot wait to see what happens, even if it's driving me crazy and I'm pulling my hair out. We figured this might happen. We figured this might be how it played out, and well, it's playing out. What will the storybook look like? Will Auburn find a way to slay the giant, defeat the demon, beat their rival, knock them off? Or will Alabama do just enough to survive and live to fight another day? An intriguing game. Definitely one of the more exciting games in Iron Bowl in recent memory. An incredible matchup. What will happen? We will see.
Now, I definitely think the 48.5 is a miss by the books. I know the Auburn offense has found some juice as of late, but I just don't think they're going to be able to put up the same offense they have here against Alabama, who the defense has gotten better and still also a tough physical group against an Auburn offensive line that's inconsistent. And I think Auburn's game plan is to just dominate time of possession and be stout in the red zone and dominate those short yardages. And I don't think that the over is even close to being in play, Nick.
I agree. I don't think that makes any sense. I think the books miss it here. I think these two defenses. I'm thinking this is going to be like a 14-10 final score. It's going to be a low scoring game. I think this defense for Auburn is a really strong unit. There is absolutely no joke. And I question what the offense will look like. I figured Daniels will probably be the starter when it's all said and done, but it wouldn't be surprising to throw Knight out there. Whoever they throw out there, I don't think they'll have enough of a successful day. Again, we've seen this script before, right? The last couple of times it's been a closer game, a lower scoring affair. I think they missed at 48.5. I agree with you there. I like the under in this one.
For today's episode, make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.